Top Med Talk.
Welcome to the Roundtable on Top Med Talk. We are in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the American Society for Enhanced Recovery and EBPOM's 6th Annual Congress for Enhanced Recovery and Perioperative Medicine. You can find more information about the meeting at aserhq.com or ebpom.org. The Roundtable blog on Top Med Talk disseminates information and it shares evidence, resources, and experiences from the world of enhanced recovery and perioperative care. We're giving access to those in healthcare, both those frontline providers and anyone interested really in improving outcomes when they're unable to attend these meetings, such as the conference that we have this weekend. So you can find more about the blog online at periopcareblog.com and by listening to our awesome podcast on topmedtalk.com and on iTunes podcast app. My name is Desiree Chappell, and I am a CRNA from Louisville, Kentucky, host of the Roundtable, along here with my friend Monty Mythen, professor of anesthesia and critical care at the University College of London. And we are joined this morning by Tim Miller, associate professor of anesthesiology at Duke University and president-elect for the American Society for Enhanced Recovery, and Stefan Holubar, colorectal surgeon from Cleveland Clinic and vice president of the American Society for Enhanced Recovery. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us at the very start of the wonderful meeting this week. So, today, before we get started, I'm just going to go through what we're going to talk about and then give you that opportunity to introduce yourselves. So I first want to start off by talking about the American Society for Enhanced Recovery, what we've been doing here in the U.S. to improve outcomes and affect change when it comes to changing care in the perioperative setting, and then talk about the future of what the future of American Society for Enhanced Recovery is. And then Stefan had wanted to talk about how we have shifted the paradigm and changed perioperative medicine through the American Society for Enhanced Recovery. So, gentlemen, again, thank you so much for being here. Tim, I'm going to let you start off, kind of give a little bit better introduction of yourself and what you think is going to happen this week here at ASER.
Yeah, morning Desiree, morning Monty, morning everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Very exciting time before the conference. This is our 6th now annual conference of enhanced recovery and perioperative medicine, and I've been involved with ASER since the start, and it's been amazing to see how ASER has grown in such a short period of time into becoming the sort of bigger and bigger organisation. And it's always very exciting before the actual Congress to see folks arrive. And obviously, it's a great location down here in Fort Lauderdale. I think we have a fantastic program. We're covering a number of sort of the core elements of enhanced recovery, as well as sort of branching out into sort of newer elements along with perioperative medicine and enhanced recovery, focusing on some of the work of the Perioperative Quality Initiative, or POQI. We've had 2 recent POQIs which have looked at firstly opioids and the opioid burden and the opioid crisis, and we're going to have a lengthy session on that, including some case discussions during this meeting, and also another POQI in combination with EBPOM that we had last year on perioperative blood pressure. And again, we've got a session on a lot of the recent literature on perioperative blood pressure management. So it's a very exciting time for ASER generally. We're continuing to play to our strength, which is being a multidisciplinary society, a mixture of surgeons, anesthesiologists, CRNAs, nurses, and all staff that are involved with patients on their perioperative journey. And that is really a unique feature of ASER. I don't think there are any other societies that have such a mix, and we really think it's great to get everyone together to discuss how we can manage patients as a team. And I think everyone that comes to the meeting really enjoys that aspect, enjoys seeing the presentations by surgeons, by different providers, by CRNAs, by perioperative nursing staff, and that's a key feature. One of the other things I'd like to say about ASER is that we're now associated with analgesia and anesthesia, A&A, in the new perioperative medicine section, which is going to be launched in June of this year. ASER is going to be the affiliated society, and in that June edition, we're going to have 3 of the POQI papers, which are going to be in that edition, along with 3 editorials and a special article about ASER, POQI, and the growth of perioperative medicine. And that's hugely exciting. It's going to be a big splash for ASER, and I think really we'll get reach a lot more folks that are out there throughout the US and the world to let people know about ASER, and then follow that up with a one-day meeting before the ASA, which is run by ASER in association with POKI and EPBOM, and again talk a lot about these POKI articles that are going to be coming out in June. So it's a big year for ASER, and it's great to be able to participate in things like this to really spread the word about the society.
So Tim, one of the criticisms that's levied at us sometimes is the fact that we have these meetings relatively frequently, annually, for example, and people sometimes turn around and say, well, surely nothing moves that quickly. Well, we were highlighting some of the conversations we recorded at our first Top Med talk at ASER 2017, and one of the things we highlighted was the discussions about the opiate or opioid crisis. And in that recorded clip from last year, you said that legislation was just about to change in North Carolina. Now, a year later, has anything changed?
It has. It has come in, that particularly for post-operative prescribing, that you can only now prescribe opioids for 7 days, whereas beforehand it was 28 days, and a lot of surgeons would prescribe opioids for 28 days. I mean, it made life easy for them, and that was the way things were done. So legislation has changed. I think CME requirements have changed, so that healthcare providers have to get some CME, particularly related to opioids. So there have been some changes, and I do think things have moved relatively quickly compared to how some things move in healthcare.
Because one of the big discussion points in the earlier POKI papers was the recurring theme of multimodal analgesia, avoiding opioids wherever possible. That seems as though it's having a very big impact. But in the POKI that we took place, that you mentioned earlier this year in Nashville about persistent post-operative opioid use, I think we came away with a message that opioid-naive individuals for major surgery, somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 10 and 1 in 20 end up being persistent opioid users. That's a shocking statistic. Is that right?
That's what. There's been a lot of evidence that has come out in the last year, and that seems to be a consistent message that we are creating a lot of persistent post-operative opioid users through what happens in the perioperative space, and that's both a challenge and an opportunity.
And enhanced recovery perioperative medicine can help that a lot. Thank you, Desiree.
Tim, thank you. Monty, great point. I think that the meeting that you guys have put together this year is good. We're going to have a lot of great discussion around that. So I'm glad we were able to talk about that. Stefan, you actually have been part of the programming committee, right? You've headed that this year along with Tim at your side. But so when you were thinking about what topics and things like that we're going to be discussing, what was leading that, and what are some of the most exciting topics that we're going to be discussing during the meeting that you're going to find?
Sure. Well, we start out the meeting, as similar to other years, with looking backwards and looking forwards and saying what is the state of art of enhanced recovery in the United States right now, and looking at what we've done and how we got there and what we need to yet do. I think there's really been a huge tipping point in the last several years, and ASER I think has been a big part of it. Changing the dogma in the United States of perioperative medicine. I think a lot of things that we grew up as anesthesia or surgery or nursing students and residents that were ingrained into the culture. And now we've really, thanks to Henrik Kellett, some 18 years ago now, have looked at these practices in a critical eye. Unrestricted fluid resuscitation, having the patients undergoing uncomplicated surgery 20 to 30 liters positive. The opioids we've already been talking about. So I think, we've really made big strides across the country, and we're trying to focus on that in this year's meeting, right off and with the introduction in the presidential session. And then we launch into the next session is really enhanced recovery across the spectrum of practices. So we're looking at things that we're trying to introduce new material that hasn't been presented in previous meetings, like there used to be pediatrics surgery, you don't really need enhanced recovery because the children do so well anyway. Well, we're going to see tomorrow if that's true or not. We're going to have other discussions in cardiothoracic surgeons and emergency laparotomy and total nip and total he, and try to really bring it all together for the spectrum of different applications of enhanced recovery. And then, as Tim mentioned, we have this really nice EPOM POCI collaboration symposium that Monty was crucial in putting together, and it really takes a critical look at blood pressure. How low, we like to espouse the benefits of permissive hypotension, but how low is too low? So we're going to be looking at that. And then we're also going to finish up with looking very deeply into not only the opioid crisis and acute opioids, chronic opioids, and the magnitude of the problem in the United States and worldwide. And then also looking at the best practices in terms of both clinical research and quality improvement methodology to really see where we're going to continue to this enhanced recovery pathway, where it's going to continue to lead us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's going to be great. We have a lot of really good information, and speaking to that, does information change from year to year? We know through our own practices that things are changing that quickly, and we need to stay up to date with that. So I'm glad that the American Society for Enhanced Recovery can fill those shoes, especially when it comes to perioperative care. So,
Stefan, this is the 6th meeting we heard earlier, which means there's 5-6 years have passed. When do you think, have we hit the inflection point? I know you touched on that, but where do you think we are in the adoption? Do you think everyone's kind of into it, at least talking in now?
I think the critical mass has been reached. I do. I think we are we may be right at the inflection point now where enhanced recovery is accepted as part of the standard of care. During my first 7 years of being an attending staff surgeon at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, 7 years ago when I graduated Mayo Clinic Fellowship, I brought, 8 years ago now, I brought Enhanced Recovery to Dartmouth and single-handedly built up that program. And before that, they had never heard of that before. And this is a phenomenon that's going across the country. I think the academicians are all acutely aware of it, but now the community hospitals are starting to see it also, the benefits. And actually, often the community hospitals are having an easier time of adopting because they have a smaller medical ecosystem, if you will, microsystems in which they can more readily manage change. So I do think we've hit the critical mass. It's part of the standard of care, and I look forward, right now, the present state, if you look at Mayo Clinic and you look at Cleveland Clinic, these places, enhanced recovery is the de facto standard of care. They have full-on embraced it, and there's no going back. And now, the curve you referred to, we're on the second half, we're on the downslope, where we have to get the late adopters and the curmudgeons, if you will, to start to embrace this, what's ultimately the best care for our patients.
So if you're from 3 different US centres, and I visited lots of places in the USA as well, so a challenge to all of you, maybe it should be a prize this week. Does anyone know of anyone who isn't at least starting, or talking about starting? Is there anyone still in the wilderness? Completely in the wilderness.
I do believe that there are. I believe we're at the tipping point when it comes to academic centers and most community centers, but I think there's a world left that still they're not utilizing it. They may be utilizing certain principles,
but they're not even talking about starting, if you see what I mean?
I don't know. I think that there's some, but here we are at ASER, we're going to be talking about it. Tim?
I think there are still some centres that aren't doing enhanced recovery, but I think it's getting smaller and smaller. I think most centres are aware of enhanced recovery. Most centres are aware. I think the big advantage of working together as a sort of surgery, anaesthesia, perioperative medicine team. A lot of centres have started to implement, and I think how effectively they've implemented is very variable, and that, of course, is one of the big challenges, and we'll be touching on that this week. And then, of course, the second challenge is sustainability. Many centres, I think you found this in the UK, Monty, you can implement successfully, but if you take your eye off the ball, then, you can find that people will go back to old established practices. And finally, I think that, enhanced recovery can evolve by itself, whether you call it enhanced recovery or whether you call it perioperative medicine. Once you have some of the intraoperative elements, you have good pathways going, then you can evolve the process, perhaps to start looking more at the preoperative area. And again, we'll be focusing on that this week, whether you could start preoperative anemia clinics, prehabilitation, and the name you call it, I don't think is irrelevant. It's all the same thing, trying to look after our patients. And I think we can evolve and focus on new areas with new science, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, it gives us definitely some opportunities in the future to reach out to those those people that are actually have started to implement but need a little bit of more support for that long-term sustainability of their programs. I think it's a great point. Stefan, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, I think the probably the Achilles heel or last undiscovered country for enhanced recovery in the United States is going to be the critical access hospitals.
Absolutely.
They're underserved. They may not be super academic or have big academic affiliations, and I think that's where the last kind of stanchion of traditional non-enhanced recovery practice will lies.
The final frontier.
The final frontier, yes.
Yeah, and I think they need a lot of support too. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for sitting down with us before the start of the board meeting for the American Society for Enhanced Recovery and Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine, or EBPOM. We greatly appreciate you taking the time, and hope to speak with you the rest of the weekend and have a very successful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Desiree.
Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe free at topmedtalk.com or on Apple iTunes and get your podcasts on a regular basis. In the next few days, recorded live here at ASER, it's the American Society of Enhanced Recovery 2018, we'll be doing more roundtable discussions led by Desiree Chappell. We'll also have late-breaking news with Dr. Geoff Lacey, Journal Club with the Top Med team and guests for featured papers. See Journal Club Express on Top Med Talk website, including links to the original papers. Tomorrow morning, we'll be kicking off with Today at ASER 2018, so please do join us virtually, or ideally in person, there is still time, at the American Society of Enhanced Recovery, Fort Lauderdale, USA. For details, go to ebpom.org. Top Med Talk.